Okay. Welcome back. I know this is an all-day extravaganza for you guys, so I appreciate your patience. I'm just going to introduce more Spector, and this is his time right now, so let's get the floor to Warren. Thanks for coming.
It's great to be here. I've been waiting many years for the opportunity to teach again at UT. I'll go into my bio here in a minute in more detail than you want, or I probably should have gone into. But you know, I used to teach here many years ago when I was in grad school, and I thought maybe someday I'd come back and teach something about film or television. The idea that I'm here actually talking about video games is astonishing and marvelous to me. So. I hope you guys appreciate the rare and wondrous opportunity, not to listen to me, but I mean to be in a class about video games. And thanks for spending the day. As I already said, I mean, this is crazy. 3 hours, an hour off, and three more hours. I don't think I'm going to take the full 3 hours, by the way, so you can be happy about that. So tonight, I want to talk about a couple things. I want to give you some background because I have no idea, and frankly, at some point I'll probably break down and just say, okay, raise your hand if you like video games, and find out who you guys are and what you're all about. But I want to make sure you know who I am and where I come from. I want to talk about why I think it's important to study games at the university, mostly because Sharon's sitting in the back as the chair of the department, so I need to sell her a little bit, and I think you might find it interesting too. And then I want to talk about what makes games important. And talk a little bit about my game design philosophy. And as highfalutin and as crazy as it sounds, I really do have one. And like I tell all my publishing partners and funding partners and people who come to work for me, if you're not interested in making the kind of game that I make, just go find somebody else. I don't need you, you don't need me, we don't need the grief, okay? Because I do a particular thing, I'm going to continue to do a particular thing until people stop buying it and paying for it. And so I want to talk about that philosophy a little bit because it's going to be sort of the underpinning of the rest of the course, for at least the evening sessions, and why you should care about my design philosophy. So for starters, who am I? Okay, this is the Warren got crazy with a scanner and has too big an ego part of the evening. Okay. So here I am trying to escape. This is me in my nerdy phase. Here I am. Boy, I was never going to have a date in my life. Oh my God, I thought I was cool. That's me getting, this is when I graduated from college and got my first 4 shares of Disney stock many years ago. That was me in graduate school with everything that was important to me. So if you ever want to know, if you want to psychoanalyze me, that's your picture right there. And now we'll move on. But wait, we're not done yet. So anyway, that was my sort of personal history. So this is me at Steve Jackson Games. I was a gamer. I played board games back before there were really, computer games or video games. I was just a fan. And I was teaching at the University of Texas, in fact, to pay my bills as a PhD candidate. And the RTF department took my class away and gave it to Charles Berg, who is still, I hear, teaching here. Anyway, that could have been me. Anyway, so I had no idea how I was going to pay my bills, and out of the blue I got a call from a guy I had fired at the Daily Texan who offered me a minimum wage job as an assistant editor for Steve Jackson Games. That is Steve Jackson. He is one of my mentors and a true gaming legend right here in Austin. So that's what we did. We messed around with little blow-up aliens all day. That is our little team. And if you can see me in the vest right here. I said I wasn't going to move, I lied. And that's my lovely wife, but we don't have to go into that anyway. And this is really what game developers do. They put puppets on and funny hats and pontificate. I'll be doing that later in the semester. And that's me being very self-satisfied, having gotten the Godfather offer to go work at TSR, the people who did Dungeons and Dragons. That really was the Godfather. They paid me 25 grand a year. It was unbelievable. Holy cow. But these are some of the things I did in the paper game world before I got into video games. So I've done a lot of writing and board game design. And that will also probably come back. We'll be talking about that, if not tonight, then certainly later in the semester. But I've done a whole bunch of stuff there, and that's just a little part of it. And then I remember I had a little epiphany. I was at TSR in Lake Geneva, Wisconsin, which is a great place to visit during the summer, but not a great place to live ever, and certainly not in the winter. And I was about to start work on a new game design, and I had a 20-sided die in one hand and percentile dice in the other. If you're not a gamer and those terms mean nothing to you, raise your hand and I will explain it later. We'll explain it later. Anyway, but I realized if that's the biggest decision I have to make, you know, about my work and my career, do I use 20-sided dice or percentile dice in a game system? I was in a dead-end business. And so I was playing a lot of video games at the time and knew I needed to get out and get into video games. And luckily, I got a job at Origin Systems where I got to do things like put on a sumo suit and look goofy, I guess, you know, and ship Underworld. That picture on the right is the day we shipped Ultima Underworld, which was one of the big days of my life. And I'm hoping we get actually the guy on the left who has a lot less hair now in here later in the semester. So that's Doug Church, Secret Master of Gaming, who you really want to hear from. And this is Origin a couple years later. This was the team photo. The red dots represent the efforts of a designer who's still working for me, actually, who put a red dot on everybody's face as they quit or were fired. You do the math. It's pretty incredible. That's what Electronic Arts did. Anyway, okay, moving right along. This is being recorded, isn't it? Awesome. So much for my career. Can I teach full time here? Okay, so in the electronic game space, this is some of what I did at Origin. You know, it's funny, it doesn't look like a coherent body of work, but it really kind of is. I mean, the Ultima 6 up there was the game that sort of introduced me to the idea that games could be more than just, you know, shoot 'em ups and kill a bunch of stuff. That games could tell amazing stories, and more important, and this is something we're going to talk more about later tonight, could tell stories in collaboration with players and not tell stories to players like earlier media. Bad Blood I put up there because it annoys Chris Roberts, who takes credit for it. Martian, I really got to stop saying stuff like that on camera. I just have no self-control. It's amazing. I get in so much trouble. Anyway, but all of those Ultima games were really just steps in an evolution towards giving players more control over their experience. Not just the minute-to-minute experience, but the overall arc of their character and the way the story unfolds. And so really, I'm not going to go into too much detail here, but all of these games, you know, some of them sold better than others, some of them were reviewed better than others, but they were all really, in my mind, about the same thing. If you divorce the content from the philosophy behind them and the gameplay inherent in them, these are all doing the same thing in my mind in a crazy, abstract sort of way. So I left Origin to go work full-time with Looking Glass, and then to Ion Storm. This is really what designers do. They wrestle with cardboard cutouts and you know, figure out how to shoot their wives and have their wives shoot them and stuff, you know. So and hang out with that picture down there. This was the PC Gamer Game Gods cover story. They did a photo shoot of that. It was. I had so many I'm not worthy moments that day. It was terrifying. It's the first time they put makeup on me too. It was pretty scary. But I mean, that's John Carmack in the middle, and Bruce Shelley, and Peter Molyneux there in the back in shadow, and Sid Meier, and anyway, Brian Reynolds, Andy Hollis. I mean, that is an amazing collection of guys, and it was an amazing honor to be among them. And then that's Tom Hall and John Romero and me in the glory days of Ion Storm, and I really am going to keep my mouth shut now. See, there are some of you who know. And then, so at that point, Ion Storm in Dallas went away, and Ion Storm Austin continued, and this was the Deus Ex team in one of our more celebratory moments, and that's the day we shipped Deus Ex, which was also a great day for me and the team. And that's me with some of the awards we won, which was cool. And that's me with Randy and Harvey Smith, not related, and Lulu Lumiere at E3 right before we shipped Deus Ex 2, Invisible War. I think Harvey's actually going to be coming in to talk here before the semester's over too. Maybe even next week. I'm not sure. Anyway, that's me at Ion Storm. Shipped a bunch of stuff. You know, Deus Ex, which won a bunch of awards and sold really well, and the PS2 version, and then sequels and a new Thief game and all that stuff. So, and then left them. It sounds crazy. I actually put in about 7 years every place I worked. But here we are at Junction Point. That was the day we moved into our new office space. We have since grown some and moved some. And I put that picture down there because I just like the fact that my dog's head is being eaten by a Tyrannosaurus Rex. So I figured it'd be fun. Okay, so at Junction Point, we actually haven't announced anything we're working on. And unfortunately, I really probably won't be able to talk much about any of that. And I really want to show all you guys all the stuff we're working on. So if I can get permission from Disney, who acquired my studio recently, maybe we can look at some really cool stuff. But we've done concept development for a bunch of publishers, Majesco and Vivendi Games in particular. We did a bunch of concept development with Valve, the company that does Half-Life and Half-Life 2, and Team Fortress and Counter-Strike. And I'm thinking we're probably going to get one of their senior design and programming people in here before the semester's over too. And then I've been working with John Woo on some stuff. All that's been announced is it's Ninja Gold, and there's a movie deal, and that's all I can really say about that. And a bunch of other stuff that I can't talk about, which is really unfortunate. And like I said, we were acquired by Disney Interactive Studios and are working on really super top secret stuff that will get me killed if I say anything. So that's the career. I mean, I got into gaming in 1983. I started making video games in 1989, and in that time, the changes, I wish it was a little darker because the changes have just been unbelievable. It's incredible. We went from thinking that graphics like the ones in the upper, oh, look at that, hey, fantastic. We thought those graphics were incredible. I mean, that was Martian Dreams in the upper left and Space Rogue in the top center. And then just a couple of years later, I mean, literally a year, 2 years later, we were doing things like Wing Commander in the upper right and Ultima Underworld in the center left. And then things get a little better on Thief and then Deus Ex. And all of a sudden Invisible War and Thief Deadly Shadows. And I mean, just that's the same business. And it's basically 15, 16, 17 years of development. That's astonishing, That, in my mind, is a lot further than the movies went from 1895 to 1910, for example. Our growth is phenomenal, and the scary bit, and I think you'll find this as the semester goes on, we're making it up as we go. How scary is that? Okay, so why games and why UT? Over the next 13 weeks in the labs and in the evening sessions, you're going to hear a lot about how games are developed and how they're sold, how they engage players, or in many cases fail to. You're going to find out about how many of us in Austin and around the world think about games. The cool thing is, like I said a minute ago, or actually probably more like 10 minutes ago now, I'm a very wordy guy. You'll learn this as time goes on. 5 years ago, this couldn't have happened. It's just amazing. This kind of industry academic dialogue could not have happened. We weren't sufficiently mainstream at that point. We were still, kind of cultish, kind of geeky, and didn't warrant this kind of attention. But now, it's a little bit of a lie to say we're bigger than Hollywood. The real truth of this, by the way, is that we are bigger than domestic box office gross. Okay, if you take into account international sales, or DVDs, or VHS, or cable, or pay-per-view, or television, broadcast stuff, we are a blip on the radar of Hollywood. So don't let anybody fool you into believing that we are bigger than Hollywood. We are only bigger than Hollywood if we define our terms very, very narrowly. But we're still really big. I mean, $30 billion business is not anything to sneeze at. And it's a $30 billion business that is, it can really project double and triple growth rates, 2x, 3x growth rates over the next, 3 to 5 years, which is more than movies or television or many other media can claim, any other media probably can claim. You know, we have millions of players. We have an incredibly diverse audience. That's a thing that's changing. I mean, it's good to see there's some women in the audience here, and the reality is that more and more women are playing all the time. The audience is aging. I mean, I'm 100 years old, and I still play games. I mean, I don't even want to tell you how obsessed I am with certain games right now. You know, just because I'm getting older doesn't mean I've stopped playing. And you guys are not, you may think you're going to stop playing. You may hope you're going to stop playing. Your parents probably certainly hope you're going to stop playing. But the reality is, you know, we're everywhere now. If you want to find the weird kid, don't look for the one who plays games and wears a black trench coat. Look for the one who doesn't play games. You know, Henry Jenkins at MIT said that about 5 years ago, and I think he was a little ahead of his time, but it's really true. The weird kids are not playing games now. So we're an incredibly diverse audience, and we are pilloried by Congress. That is the sure sign that you have made it. You know, I actually have friends who have testified before Congress now, which is a terrifying, terrifying thought. You know, we get written up in Newsweek and USA Today, and I mean, the Statesman has regular game coverage now. We are mainstreamed, and that kind of, you know, public scrutiny and public acceptance, I think, demands that we not just sort of take in all of that the data, that we take in all of that content, but that we think about how it comes to us and what it means when we experience it and how we experience it. So, I have a secret agenda. You know, yeah, secret. So you know, you put all that together, and you know, we're here to talk about video games at UT for 13 weeks. That's really why we're here, okay? But I want to go further. I'm so glad that the chairman of the RTF department is here for this. I want to see this dialogue and this cooperation taken to a whole new level. I want to see games and gaming, history, criticism, analysis, effects studies, development, production, marketing, business. I want to see that a permanent, ongoing part of the curriculum, whether that's in computer science or RTF or some independent department. I don't care. But you know, who knows? Maybe this whole Bellow Center thing will be our little entree into the mainstream of education. Okay, so that's my secret agenda out there. So what do developers get out of stuff like this? What am I getting out of this? Well, you know, it's kind of weird because I mean, I'm like way overeducated compared to most of my peers. A lot of us don't even have high school degrees. I mean, one of the most talented people I've ever worked with dropped out of high school. In fact, several of them did. And they're driving way nicer cars than I am, by the way. So why should we care? Well, I think one of the things that comes out of universities is new ways of thinking about stuff. Game design is a better understood discipline every year, but I mean, frankly, we're still like idiot savants. I mean, we really are making it up as we go. Anybody who tells you, this is true, if anybody sits up here and tells you they have the secret, and by the way, there's at least one person who will, and I'll do this when he's on the stage, okay? Drill him. I mean, ask him tough questions because he's full of it, okay? We do not understand this medium yet. We don't understand what we do. We need help in crafting a shared vocabulary. I cannot have a conversation with someone who works at Blizzard and be sure that we mean the same thing. When I talk to someone at Valve and we say the word designer, we mean something completely different. That's totally screwy. You know, there's basically educators can, by graduating class after class after class of people like you, can ensure that that we have a vocabulary. That when you come to me, I know that you know. Like, if you're an RTF student, you know what an f-stop is. You know what a key light is. You know what cross-cutting is. You know, there are certain things that I know you know, and when you say them, you mean the same things I do. And when a designer comes to me from another company, I have no idea what they know. I have no idea what they mean, and it's just deadly. Okay. I think universities, at least in theory, this may be me being naive, okay, and you can all laugh, but You know, in the game business, secrecy is the norm. People don't talk about what they're doing. There isn't a lot of exchange. At GDC, you get just the Game Developers Conference, sorry, you get just the tip of the iceberg. And I think that by getting people sitting down here and talking in a kind of a more safe environment, and getting people from Valve teaching here, I'm just hoping we could get people used to the idea that it's okay to talk about what you're doing. It's like people aren't going to rip off your ideas. We get more and better resources. I mean, this is the big one. I mean, how many of you are in this because you want a job in the game business? Okay, right. So there's at least a hope that, you know, certainly if there were an ongoing program here, there'd be at least the hope that you would get some training, you get some experience, and that when you got to me as a hiring, you know, developer, we wouldn't have to train you. You would have some skills. You would understand, you know, all those things that you know, film majors understand and computer science guys understand about their field. So we would get some new resources. You know, we get freedom from the demands of wannabes. I guess that's what this slide really means. I mean, oh my God, we get like letters and emails and visits and calls from people who want to get in the game business, and we do not have the time to deal with all of those folks who want to make games. You know, if you're in a four-year degree program, not that exists here yet. I know it does some other places, and I'm hoping it will here someday. But, you know, I mean, let's use the RTF example again. I mean, what percentage of RTF students actually end up making films? Okay, not me. You know, I still value my education. I loved it. I'm glad I got it. I learned a hell of a lot. But you know, I was kind of weeded out of the filmmaking field, right? So a four-year degree program can teach me a lot, can teach people a lot, and weed out the ones who aren't serious, and it can better prepare the ones who aren't. Okay, so we get some staffers, not people we have to train. We also get some up-to-date development processes. You guys can try all sorts of stuff. You know, you can figure out if the Scrum method works. We'll probably end up talking about that at some point too. You know, Scrum. Do you guys know Scrum? See, there you go. I'm just learning it. I'm reading books. I'm taking one-day training courses. You guys can actually try it, you know, on projects where the risk isn't $20, $30 million, you know. That's a good thing. So you can come to me and tell me how to do Scrum, okay? And developers get credibility, right? I mean, we still need that. We're really in the public eye now. And we're still by and large a bunch of, you know, we need a shave, we need to make sure we shower often and all that sort of stuff. You know, we clean up pretty good, but we're not quite ready to bring home to the folks yet. We need credibility. We need people like Henry Jenkins from MIT testifying before Congress. Okay. We need to be taken seriously by the cultural gatekeepers, which is the universities, by the way, if we're going to take that next step and be a real, like, valued part of our culture. Okay, so what do you guys get? Well, you know, you guys are actively engaged. I mean, I've already been told how stoked you all are. I'm stoked to be here. This is a good thing. So there are students who want to do this. Again, it's like I talk at universities all over the world, and I constantly hear that people used to say they want to be Steven Spielberg. Now they say they want to be, you know, Richard Garriott or John Carmack or Peter Molyneux or Will Wright. Mostly Will Wright. I want to be Will Wright. You know, student interests are met. That's the thing. You know, the students are. I mean, as much as, you know, Latin and literature used to be the thing that students wanted, and I guess, you know, when I was your age, you know, I wanted to be the next Steven Spielberg. At least I thought I did. You know, and so the university gave me a place to get what I wanted and needed. Games also, from the university's perspective and the students' perspective, also offer a new way of looking at our culture. I mean, if you want to talk about violence in society, that's everyone's favorite when you're talking about games, right? We're the place to start now. It's not, it used to be like, I mean, my mom was so worried when I watched the Three Stooges and Bugs Bunny cartoons. You know, no one worries about that anymore. People worry about doom, right? Even though they should be worrying about like something a little more modern. But there are free speech issues that are often linked to the violence question that you can study you can learn about by studying games. There are gender issues, you know. Why don't more women play games? Why is it only now that women are starting to play games, even though the content really isn't changing all that much? There are age issues, economic issues, business issues, aesthetic issues. I mean, there are all sorts of things that you can learn as well by studying games, or maybe better than you can by studying any other medium. And you know, I'll go a step further and say, if you want to be a fully engaged member of 21st century society and you're not paying attention to games, you're missing a bet. You're missing a bet. Okay. I mean, if you talk to guys in Hollywood, especially in the television industry, I mean, we're stealing their viewers. We're stealing their eyeballs. You know, television's doing this, and we're doing this. So you better start preparing now. If you want to understand the medium of the 21st century in the same way that radio, TV, and film, or perhaps the media of the 20th, get in on the ground floor now. Okay. The other thing for universities and for students, I mean, if you guys are not excited by that slide, find another line of work. Okay. Well, this is not your line of work. Sorry, it's my line of work, and it excites me. I mean, after what is it, 24 years of making games. In fact, Friday was my 24th anniversary in the game business. Every day I go into the office and I see something no one in the world's ever seen before. You know, I've been I've been a footnote in history. I've been a small part of creating a medium that did not exist. You know, we're figuring out how it works now, and it's not a solved problem. There's the opportunity right now to make this whatever we want it to be. And that kind of thing, it's by the way, it is very hard to do that in the context of a commercial enterprise. It's very, very hard for someone in the business to take big chances. There are probably 20 people in this business who get to take the kinds of chances that a Will Wright gets to make. Universities, I hope, are still about taking chances. So you can create a new medium. That opportunity comes along twice a century, and you're here at the right time to do it. And then, you know, if you're an historian, I mean, I won't get off on this hobby horse, at least not tonight, but you know, I love film history. It was my thing. I lived for it. And I was constantly dismayed that, you know, 80% of silent films are gone forever, that, you know, Warner Brothers, I wrote my master's thesis on Warner Brothers cartoons, okay? The person in the administration building laughed when she opened it up, and she didn't even bother like checking it. She just closed it and said, "You're okay, you pass." But you know, Warner Brothers burned all of their archives. There's almost nothing left of the history of Warner Brothers cartoons, and it doesn't sound like much, but if you're into history, I mean, it's a real problem. And the fact is, most of the practitioners of in this business, in this medium, are still alive today. They're still practicing, and they're still around, so we can preserve the history before it's gone. Okay, so anyway, for all those reasons and more, I mean, that's kind of why I wanted to do this, and I've had the opportunity to do it at other places and said no, and it's partly geography. I mean, I live in Austin, right? But it's also because I'm a UT guy, still have my Horn season tickets, so I just want to, I mean, basically, I'm here to sort of give back, I guess, a little bit to UT, and thanks for making this opportunity possible, by the way. Okay, so we're almost to a break, by the way. This is yeah, so relax. So here's what the course is about. I guess I already covered the labs and what's going to happen there. The evening sessions, I want to talk a little bit about what's happening on Monday evenings. Okay, so despite my love of talking in my own voice, I want to talk as little as possible. I'll jump in and lecture when either there's something I feel so strongly about, I just really got to talk about it. You know, it's like I really want to talk about story in games. So at some point I'll probably just get up here and gab for a while. But for the most part, what I want to do is I want to get other people in here. So you get a broader view of this industry and this art form. You know, I've kind of modeled this in my own mind anyway, after Inside the Actors Studio or John Pearson's masterclass on the film side. I want to get guys who are either making games or writing about them or critiquing them up here to talk to you about what they think. And some of them are going to give lectures, very few of them, because developers are basically pretty lazy, actually. And so it'll probably be mostly me trying to remember the journalistic skills I developed at the Texan, and we'll see how that goes. But we may even get some political types in here before the season's over. Jesus, I'm sorry. I'm thinking television anyway. But we'll be discussing a whole bunch of stuff. It's all in the syllabus, so I'm not going to go into that too much now. So again, if Ari's already gone over this, I apologize, but I want to. The course is broken up into 4 parts. So obviously it's a survey course. Do not expect to leave here with the skills to go out there and get a job at Junction Point or BioWare or Valve. That's probably not going to happen. But I hope you come out of this with an appreciation of how games work, how they make meaning, how interactivity works, what genre means in games, because it's a really tough problem. Some idea of the difficulties of establishing that kind of shared vocabulary I was talking about for discussing games. I mean, if you'll have people up here come up and they'll start talking about frobbing stuff and scupping code, and most developers won't know what they're talking about either. Okay, so we'll be talking a little bit about that. I want to talk about the differences if you're developing for the PC or the Xbox 360, for example. And we'll probably talk about whether online games are games at all, which I don't think they are, and Richard Garriott thinks they are, and so that'll be fun. We'll talk some about how you create a game. We'll talk about the processes and that go into that you use to develop a game. What platform differences do for and their effect on development. We'll talk about all sorts of how you actually create a game. And we'll talk about the business some. I want to talk about how the mainstream industry works, but I'm also trying to get some independent guys out here who you may not have heard of, but they're trying to do something very different, and probably, frankly, more along the lines of the kinds of things that you would be doing if this were a hands-on, sit down, write code, create art assets, generate interactive scripts sort of course. And so I want to talk about both the mainstream and the independent game movement. And I want to talk about culture, because I think, that's real important to me. Games are cultural artifacts. We affect them, they affect us, they change us, and I want to talk about how that all happens. Okay. Wow. I thought I was closer to a. Oh no, we're almost to a break. So, like I said, obviously any one of these could fill an entire semester. Any one of those topic areas. So the whole goal here is to expose you to as many different approaches to games as possible. That's why I want to get different speakers in here, so you don't just get my view on things. I want to give you an idea of what it's like to be in the trenches of a game development company, or a website devoted to games, or a lobbying organization that's trying to prevent Joe Lieberman from destroying my livelihood and our art form. And at the end of the course, all I really want is I hope you take away a new appreciation of games and what makes them tick, a deeper appreciation of how they're made. If you want to get into the game business, a good idea of what you actually need to learn and maybe how to go and learn it, and a better idea of where you want to go in gaming. Even if it's just you want to remain a gamer, that's fine. But what I demand is that you go out and demand more from people like me. Because one of the frustrations for me is that gamers are so undemanding. They keep accepting the same game over and over and over again with prettier pictures and flashier graphics and redundancy. Anyway, and cooler sounds, bigger explosions this time. That's not good enough. So I'm hoping you guys, what you take away from this is, wait, games can be more than they are now. And even if I can't change it from the inside, I will buy games that are more than the games I've been playing. I'm not going to buy Halo 72, And in that way, even if you don't get into the game business, or you don't become a lobbyist, or you don't become a critic or historian, you can change the game industry by being a more discriminating gamer. Okay. So with that, I actually have a whole lecture here that I haven't gotten to, believe it or not. But I want to take a break. First of all, I need to take a drink, and figured that's kind of the preamble. That's what the course is about. Do you have any questions about that? Excellent. I have reduced you to a stupor. Okay. So if it's okay, can we take a break? and then we'll come back and we'll talk about game design, my philosophy, and as I say here, how I learned to embrace my biases. Okay? All right. Thanks. We are back. Okay. So, like I said, I want to spend a little bit of time, well, probably a fair amount of time, talking about how I at least start thinking about game design. You know, we've talked about why games are important in the abstract, and now let's talk a little bit more concretely. The reason for doing this is to provide some context for the rest of the semester, because the reality is, you know, I'm going to be sitting up there with people who make games, and I really do have very strong biases, and the questions I ask them, and the kinds of things I'm going to be trying to elicit from them, are going to be driven by a lot of my own prejudices. So everything about games, it doesn't matter if you're a programmer, an artist, writer, you know, whatever. It really does all start with design. You know, do I really want to go into that? Yeah, okay. Anyway, the reality is you can learn to be a programmer at the University of Texas, and you can apply those skills to game development if you want fairly easily. And you can learn to become a graphical artist. You can learn how to use Photoshop and Maya and all the tools that we use, and learn to be a digital artist. You can go to the business school and learn how to build a budget and how to manage you know, software development or any kind of business. But what the hell is a designer? Okay, that's an entirely new field. It's where the rubber meets the road. It's where all the pieces come together. It's where all that code takes on meaning. It's where all that art, you know, comes to life. It's what makes us different. Okay, and what makes us more than just traditional media experiences where you get to make a couple of choices about what gun you use. So I want to talk about an approach to design. I want to say the approach to design, the only approach to design. But there are enough people who don't believe this that I can't really say that, even though I know it to be true in my heart. This is a true fact. Okay. Gaming will progress at a rate that's tied to our awareness and exploitation of what makes us different from other media, right? And when we figure out how best to exploit what makes us different from other media, that's when we start being special, okay? So the key is what makes us unique. The road to critical success, the road to commercial success, the road to cultural impact, the road to everywhere starts and ends there. So let me be clear. I mean, I was just asked me how does a film guy fit into the game world, and you should ask that question again so we can talk about that after I get done here. But there are clearly similarities between film, some aspects of film, and some aspects of games. There is clearly crossover from other media, and it's okay to borrow elements from other media, but we will never reach our true potential. And we'll never be anything more than the bastard stepchild of Hollywood until we embrace this. What makes us unique? Okay? So what does make us unique? There are a handful of things. These 3/4 are kind of the keys for me. And they lead to something else that I may talk about. I mean, okay. Anyway, I'll get to this. Sorry, now I'm officially straying from my notes and stuff. But, we can take players and send them places they could never go. All right. It's not Luke Skywalker. It's not us watching Luke Skywalker decide whether to embrace the dark side in Knights of the Old Republic. It's each of us. We are making that decision. Okay. We can transport you to the Star Wars universe. In Half-Life, each of us becomes Gordon Freeman. And I can tell you, I have personally saved the world of Hyrule many, many times over the years. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, you have Google, use it. We send players places they couldn't go any other way. Right? And we can immerse them in those worlds. We can almost convince them they're really there. When we're really on, you know, and it's 4 in the morning, and especially on a PC, just to betray that bias too. when your nose is 6 inches from your monitor and your view is filled with, I don't know, the Citadel station in System Shock, or, in Bioshock, you are in that underwater city. Holy cow. We are at our best when we remove obstacles to belief, okay? And so if you ever actually do get the chance to make a game, remove obstacles to belief that you are there, right? And you are well on your way. And this last one, we are the only medium in the history of mankind ever, anywhere, period, that demands participation and that can respond to what we do when we participate. All right? I mean, those are critical things. If you're watching a TV show and you get up, pretend you don't have TiVo or something, right? You get up to go get a drink. You can pretty well be assured that the action is going to unfold pretty much without you, And if you're watching a movie and you have to go up to get some popcorn or something, it's going to keep going. The words on a page don't change their order if you put a book down. If you stop playing a game, the game stops, okay? That is the critical difference. And you add all those together, and what we can do is we can generate player-driven experiences, and we can share authorship. And these are new concepts. I mean, I know, well, I'll come back to that too. We offer players systems that they can exploit however they want. Not how I want them to, but how they want. When we're at our best, we can even create systems that allow them to set in motion events that we as developers don't control, can't anticipate, and didn't plan for. That's when things get really interesting. Holy cow. That's when games become sort of like constrained life and let players test behaviors that we don't want them testing in the real world, frankly, and find out something about themselves as they play. In other words, we're the first medium that's two-way, okay? And for me, speaking personally and speaking as a developer, the best moments in games are the ones that belong to the players and not to the developers, right? A lot of people disagree. I mean, I'm trying to get Tim Schafer to come here. Tim did a bunch of the best Lucas adventures and just did Psychonauts recently. Did Grim Fandango. If you're not much of a gamer, and especially if you're a movie guy, play Grim Fandango. Holy cow. And he's a really good friend of mine, and I love him to death, and I think he is a super genius of the first water. But he and I have, in forums like this, we have yelled at each other amiably. And like, Tim, if every player is going to have exactly the same experience, why don't you just make a movie? If the choices you make about what dialogue you pick, I mean, he makes those games where you have a menu of conversational choices and you click on one and then that takes you down a conversational path. But in Tim's games, you always come back and go through all the paths because he doesn't want you to miss one word of his amazingly funny, creative, wacky mind. And it's like, that is the illusion of interactivity, okay? And as much as I love that man, and I do, it's like, dude, go make a movie and make me really happy because I want to go pay you my, whatever it is to see a movie now, $20, to see a movie. But when we're at our best, I mean, I really think that's, I hate to say it, I think that's an evolutionary dead end. I think that's like, setting up the camera in the 12th row of the orchestra and filming Sarah Bernhardt kind of stuff. We're beyond that. We have to move beyond that to really realize our potential, okay? So let's look at some of the games that actually do this. I'm not going to go into huge detail, but The Sims is it's a real-time creation of virtual people. Develop those virtual people. It's unique every time you play. No two people have the same experience. Grand Theft Auto, it's real-time, free-form exploration of a virtual city. Everybody has a different experience every time they play. Tetris, it's a real-time puzzle game where everybody has a different experience every time they play. I mean, it's crazy. Every game on this list, in its own way, is saying my creativity as a developer is less important, or no more important anyway, than the creativity of the person on the other side of this conversation. Okay, every game is a conversation between the developer and the player in a way that is not true of other media. So all those games up there, they certainly satisfy their developers' creative urges. I'm going to go back to that. I mean, that is a pretty damn good list of games. You know, those are games that are going to be remembered a long time from now. Those are games that that influenced this medium and changed it. Every one of them. So they certainly satisfied their developers' creative urges. They all made a bundle of money, which is good for publishers. They made players happy. They made the reviewers sit up and take notice. And they, you know, anyway, you can read the thing, right? So thinking outside the box, not just doing stuff that borrows from other media and that recreates, you know, this time more cinematic. It's like, get over it, okay? So what is it that's so special about these games? These, I think, are the keys. Players interact in real time. I think as soon as you go turn-based, I mean, and by the way, I told you this is how I embraced my biases. Your mileage may vary. I have no patience for turn-based games anymore, unless I'm playing with other real people. If I'm playing with other people, that's another story. Sorry? XCOM is a wonderful game. Its time has passed. Sorry. And you know, I mean, I play Carcassonne and you know, Settlers on Xbox Live, just the way I play it on the board. But in a video game, in a computer game, real time, man, that's where it's at, right there. We were talking about this in the break a little bit earlier. Players make significant choices. I'm not just talking about what gun do I use to kill that thing, or do I use a wrench and electrify it, or do I, you know, use my teleportation stuff to throw a garbage can at it. I'm talking about, do I save my brother, or do I fulfill the mission goals that were set for me by my boss? You know, do I destroy the sentient computer that will make us all one mind, and mean that we will have peace at the expense of individual, you know, freedom, or do I make sure that happens? Do I plunge the world into a dark age, ensuring that we all have personal freedom but live in chaos, or do I make this all one big hive mind? That is a decision that I get chills thinking about it. Your mileage may vary again, but you know, games are at their best when the choices you're making are saying something about you and not about the game or the character. Okay. One of the things that was coolest to me about Deus Ex, one of the games I did, and by the way, this is true of many of the games I've worked on. It's just Deus Ex is the easiest one to talk about. You know, when it was over, usually when you go on the forums after a game ships, what you read is, wasn't it cool when the gigantic tentacle monster burst through the window and you had to, you know, fire 18 grenades at it, and then you had to sneak by it, and it's like, yeah, whatever. When Deus Ex shipped, people talked about, is the world better off in a new dark age of personal freedom, or is the world better off in this interconnected thing? I mean, holy cow. That blew my mind. I mean, people got it. People got it, you know? They were saying things about themselves and about the world through their play, okay? And, you know, just to use a more recent example, I'm playing BioShock right now. And I think it's doing it in very small ways. I wish it was doing more. Hoping I can get Ken up here to talk about it so we can grill him about why he didn't do a little bit more. But the reality is there's a big moral choice you get to make. Do you harvest energy that you need from these little girls, okay, which doesn't do good things to them, or do you redeem them, even though it means you get less energy, you get other rewards, but you know, who are you, right? And I have friends who are saying, I can't believe you're redeeming them, just go get the points, come on, you know. I can't do that. I can't do that because of what it says about me, right? That's when games get really cool. Okay, so significant choices, not just what weapon do I use. Choices have consequences. If the player doesn't realize why that was an important choice and what effect that choice had on his personal experience, or her, sorry, personal experience on the game world, it's irrelevant, okay? So those choices have to have consequences. And the world has to be responsive enough You have to feedback. Feedback is a word you are going to hear constantly. I guarantee it this semester. You have to feed back to the player the result of those choices. Okay. So anytime the player does something, you immediately provide feedback, right? That says, okay, I saw that you just, dropped your trousers. Here's what's going to happen. Here's what happened as a result, right? Okay. And each play session is unique. That is, it drives my teams crazy. It drives my publishers crazy. I don't care, okay? Every person who plays should have a unique experience every time they play, right? And to give you an example of how powerful that can be, again in Deus Ex, there was a year after we shipped, I was watching the lead tester on the game demonstrate the game for some execs, and he was in a place I had been hundreds and hundreds of times myself, a virtual place in the game, and he was doing something that I had watched thousands of people do before, and I knew what problem he had to solve, and I watched him like move an explosive crate over here, and set off an alarm over there, and get out. He was doing something that I had never seen anybody try before, and I watched him, and I was sitting there a year after we shipped, something I've seen thousands of times. Is that going to work? I mean, I made the game, and I was like, is that going to work? And sure enough, it did, and I just about died. That's when games get cool. That's what games do that no other medium has ever done. That isn't going to happen in a movie, and I love movies, by the way, make no mistake. That's not going to happen in a book. That's not going to happen in a play. Might happen in a live-action role-playing game, but then you got to be a real geek, okay? So here it's like socially acceptable. It's not quite so nerdy anymore, and it is something that is completely new in the history of mankind. I'm a little given to overstatement, as a note you will notice before the semester's over. Okay, so the key is that player experience comes first. As you go through this semester, if you take nothing else away from this, it's not about you, okay? You're not Steven Spielberg. If you want to be Steven Spielberg, make movies, or Tim Schafer, okay? Player experience comes first. Their creativity means more than yours. Players love to leave their mark in the world. You have to give them every opportunity to do so. That's true in board games. It's true in card games. It is true in, tagging, in graffiti, in tattooing. I mean, you name it. Players want to leave their mark. People want to leave their mark on their world. Let them leave their mark in this virtual world. Okay. So here's the key. What most developers do, and this is becoming less and less true as time goes on, largely because of that list of games I showed earlier. But what most developers do is they create finely crafted puzzles. They're beautiful. They're jewels. Okay, open that door by placing 7 red tomato cans on the 3rd shelf down. Get the smelly sweat socks and mix them in with the rotting cheese to create the wand of doom that will do. What? No. It's not about puzzles. You want to give players tools to discover and create gameplay. All right? You want to provide a context in which players act. You're not determining their experience. You're not predetermining it. If you are, you might have success. There are plenty of games that are puzzly and linear. I mean, Half-Life is the ultimate roller coaster ride, and I love playing it once in a while, but the reality is, it's a roller coaster, okay? And we want to create worlds, right? I want to create worlds, sorry. Okay, so you're going to bound player experience, but you're not going to determine it. If you do this, I think you're onto something really, really special, okay? And I'm not the only one who's noticed this. This is not just an industry thing. There's way too much text on this and many of the subsequent slides. I apologize for that. But the critical thing here is that, Mark Pesce wrote a book called The Playful World, which is well worth reading. The computer demands self-expression. The computer allows self-expression. That's the key, okay? And we learn more about ourselves in the way we interact with computers. That's the critical thing there. Self-expression. Major factor separating games from other media. Okay, I'm going to mangle this guy's name, and I hate it because I know him. Espen Øsep wrote a book called Cybertext, which, wait till you're in grad school, before you read it, because it's got a lot of big words in it. Holy cow, man! It's a very dense academic tome. But the critical part here is the struggle not merely for interpretive insight, but narrative control. The quoted part at the end there is the player talking. I want this text to tell my story, the story that could not be without me. Okay, and this one just kills me. I found this back in 1991, and I wish I still had the magazine. It drives me crazy. Anybody remember? No, you guys are all too young to remember Compete. Anyway, this is a much longer quote, which I won't bore you with. But he said, "Why aren't we letting the player decide that? You have to ask why, as a developer, as a designer, every decision you make, if you can let the player decide it without wrecking something, do it. Let the player decide." And that next line, I mean, that just sort of, the scales fell from my eyes, and I went, oh my God, the heavenly light shone and all that. You and the player collaborate to create the final story. And I live by that last bullet item. I mean, every freedom you can give to the player is an artistic victory. Every needless boundary in your game should feel to you like a failure. He wrote that in 91. He was so, I mean, good Lord. I mean, the guy's a science fiction writer. What's that? Yeah, well, we don't have to talk about Advent writing. He also wrote Ender's Game, which, by the way, you should read. Many courses like this require Ender's Game. It is a terrific, if I may, it is a terrific novel, and has a lot to say about games and game development and the uses and abuses of games. So here's the thing: collaboration is the key. A lot of times when I talk about this, even with my teams, it's like everybody assumes it's like I'm some, sort of crazy holodeck, we've got to give the player complete freedom to do whatever they want. I don't believe that for an instant. Total freedom isn't the goal. It isn't, and it shouldn't be. The holodeck, I have no interest in creating a holodeck, by the way. So you need both sides to have equally strong voices. I mean, total freedom is scary. I mean, frankly, even the amount of freedom that many of the games on that list give you is a little scary. I've seen people play some of those games, including some of my own, which is a little scary. They'll get to a choice point, a place where there's an obvious decision, one of those choices with consequences, and I'll see them do this. It's like they've got their gun, and they're running around, and they just go. I did that like they really have a gun. They don't really have a gun, okay? They're running around like this, WASD and a mouse, But it's like they just stop dead. They're terrified. It's like, oh my God, I have a choice to make. And the fact that in a game, you watch somebody play a game and they're stopped dead just terrorized at the thought of having a choice. That tells you a lot about what most games are really like when it comes to choices. So total freedom isn't the goal. We want to negotiate with players. It's a negotiation. It's a dialogue. That's the cool thing. I'm having a dialogue with millions of people every time I ship a game. Okay. We don't want to create players don't want to create a story out of whole cloth, but they don't want it imposed on them either. They want to engage with us as developers. Okay. And we're the only medium that can allow that to happen. So. Where does the developer get his voice? Where do I get my power in this relationship? I create the rules, game systems, and you guys in the labs are all going to get a chance to do that. You can do that just as well in the context of a paper prototype, a card game, a face-to-face role-playing game. You can create rules that players have to live by. Okay? We create the sounds and images. If we don't allow something to happen, just to sum it up, it can't happen. So what we have to do is we have to find ways to empower players now. Our voice is clear. I mean, we can make anything happen. We are gods in this little world. Okay, Gary, I'm not kidding. Holy cow! Have any of you read Understanding Comics by Scott McCloud? Who's read Understanding Comics by Scott McCloud? Oh my God, you people are deprived. Go to the library, go to the funny book store, go somewhere, buy Understanding Comics. Maybe I should get him down here. I'm done. I can't talk to you people anymore. No, anyway. Scott McCloud is a really smart guy who draws funny books and writes funny books. Okay, yeah, he's really a smart guy. Anyway, he wrote a book called Understanding Comics, which is about understanding comics. Anyway, what he talks about is, okay, all of this is adding up to, you know, the ways in which players interpret what they see on a comic book page. That there are panels, and the stuff between the panels, that's where readers of comic books get their power, right? And he talks about this one thing where he has an axe raised in one comic panel, and then, you know, there's someone dead in the next panel. And his contention, and he makes his case much more effectively than I am making it here, what happened between those panels is the art of comics, all right? And it's where readers become complicit in the story, in the telling of the story, okay? I mean, to kill a man between panels is to condemn him to 1,000 deaths. The 1,000 deaths being the 1,000 readers who imagine it differently. But the fact is, comics don't let you decide not to raise that axe, okay? And games do. You know? So here's my little nod to when I was in grad school. All media are interactive, of course, you know? You know, but there's a key difference. You know, games are responsive. This gets back to what I was talking about before. If you get up in the middle of a TV show, it keeps playing without you. Games require this direct action, okay? They are not complete without you, okay? There is no meaning in a game without you. If you turn on Bioshock and you let it run, you'll get an attract screen that will play over and over again. You will not get a story. You will not get an experience. You will not get anything. Games are about player participation, okay? And they're not just about interpretation. When we watch a movie, when we read that comic, we interpret things, okay? And we sort of figure, I mean, film criticism is about, I mean, about many things, but among other things, it is about what is the author's intent. I mean, obviously we can argue about who the author is, you know, but when I see Transformers, you know, I'm blaming Michael Bay, you know, and trying to figure out what the hell he was trying to tell me in that. Anyway, yeah, okay, I need to shut up again. Interactive media are about the player's intent. I mean, I know I sound like a broken record, but you know, players have to precipitate the events, okay? So here's another key thing, right? It's not just about making choices and having consequences. The nature of player participation is critical. The nature of the interaction is critical, right? Intentionality is one of the core concepts in gaming, and it's defined as this is actually a definition I completely stole from Doug Church, who you saw in that picture with a lot of hair, who you may see with a lot less hair before the semester's over. But it's the ability of the player to devise personally meaningful goals. I mean, that sentence is packed with meaning. The ability of the player to devise goals, to devise meaningful goals, to devise personal goals, okay? So as a designer, if you're not thinking about this, you're not doing your job. So you create your own goals, you formulate your own plans, you execute those plans, and you use the information and resources provided by the game. If you have that in the back of your mind as you're conceiving your first game, you know, during this semester, you will be way ahead of the game. Way, way ahead. Okay, I'm almost done. Relax. Okay, so just to repeat, I mean, gaming's going to progress by exploiting its unique characteristics. I wish I had written the medium of shared authorship, because I believe we're the only one. We're all about the player experience, not designer creativity. That is going to be I mean, if you're like me and you have an ego, that could be one of the toughest things you have to embrace as a game developer. It's not about you. And games are participatory, not interpretive. All right? If you can wrap your mind around all of that, you win. Okay, so how do we do this? How do we go from identifying stuff to actually, using it. And frankly, that's what the rest of the course is about. Okay? So I hope by the end of the 13 weeks, you know, you've embraced this. If you haven't, I hope you've argued with me. If you think I'm full of it, I hope you'll let me know. I have the thickest skin of any human being you have ever met, believe me. I have been in the game business a long time. I'll be honest with you, a lot of people, a lot of my colleagues, a lot of people who work for me think I'm insane about this stuff. Well, probably about other things too, but you know, but some of the folks who think I'm nuts are gonna be sitting up on this stage, and they'll give you their own take on things. I want you to argue with me. I expect them to argue with me, and just, you know, buckle up, because it's going to be a bumpy ride. Okay. Any more questions? I've boggled you again. Awesome. Okay. Oh, there's a question. Hmm? Yep. Yep. So the question, if you couldn't hear, was is there value in those roller coaster rides, in the more linear experiences, if I can paraphrase? Yeah, of course there is. I mean, I'm kind of a doctrinaire guy. I believe in overstatement to make points. I would never say that people, I would never tell Tim Schafer he shouldn't make the games he makes. I love the games he makes, okay? And, you know, my favorite game of all time is Legend of Zelda: Link to the Past on the SNES, which is, you know, completely linear. Everybody has the same experience, and I absolutely adore it. The problem for me is when that's a steady diet, okay? And a lot of my sort of overstatement comes from just personally enjoying overstating things and being provocative, and partly that when you're the still small voice in the wilderness, you know, you kind of have to scream really loud so anybody pays attention. Now that we have a somewhat better balanced diet game-wise, you know, I could probably tone down my arguments a little bit. No, I would never say that people shouldn't make Call of Duty, or that, I mean, God knows, I mean, I played Half-Life 2 obsessively from start to finish, you know. As changes of pace, as a way to get away from the tough decisions we all make every day in the workaday world, those games are hugely valuable, you know. But in the same way that, you know, there's room for, you know, I don't know, pick the art film of your choice and pick the summer blockbuster of your choice. There's room for both of those in the film world, and there's room for the literary novel and the beach novel, you know. In 24 years of making video games, I think I could probably count the literary games, the games that actually try to do more. I mean, you probably saw most of them up on the screen earlier. You know, maybe there are 20 in 20 years. It's kind of pathetic, you know. So it's not that those games shouldn't be made. It's that those games so dominate the business that I think it's actually holding back the medium from developing appropriately. And I do think, again, I'll try not to overstate this. I do think that as players become more sophisticated, as they have over the last 20 years, I think it's inevitable that people will find those roller coaster rides, those linear experiences, less and less interesting. And as people age, I mean, I got to tell you, I have zero interest in running around killing a bunch of stuff at this point in my life. You know, there are other things I want to be doing with my leisure time than you know, virtual killing or recreations of movie experiences, or even you know, a lot of sports simulations. There's other kind of content that older people from different cultures, maybe you know, women as opposed to men, are going to find interesting. And all I really want is a little broader range of possibilities. You know? So I do think that kind of game is going to become, you know, if it's now 80% of the market, I think it's going to go down and down and down and down and down. But that will only bring things to a level of sort of equilibrium that I think we need to achieve. I'm not saying they shouldn't make them. Yeah. Yeah, that's a great question. Is making, I hate the word literary games. I wish I hadn't just said it. I've got to find a better term for that. I don't know what I mean actually, so I apologize. But we'll use it for now because I don't want to spend time thinking about it. Are literary games going to make games more mainstream? No, frankly, you know, the reality is Halo 3 is going to sell a lot better than my next game. I all but guarantee it. Okay, and sort of the bane of my existence as a developer is that, for one, I think I'm pretty sure it's coincidence, but id managed to ship Wolfenstein like a month before I shipped Underworld, and Doom a month before I shipped Underworld 2, and Quake a month before I shipped System Shock, and you know, let's compare sales levels. You know, so I don't think that you know, literary games are going to make things more mainstream. I do think that creating a medium and an industry that is more true to itself and that allows a broader range of content will make us mainstream. I think it's that we have to just make games for a broader audience, but not make any one game for that broad audience, if you see what I mean. Yeah. Yeah, thank God for the Wii and the DS. Holy cow. Yeah, the question is, what do I think about you know, interactivity and different control schemes and control mechanisms? I think it's great. You know, the issue for me is you don't want to. I mean, like Guitar Hero is a fantastic game, and Rock Band is going to be amazing, but there's a $200-300 investment in Rock Band to get all those instruments, right? I mean, that's a barrier to entry. You know, if you the Wii remote doesn't, and the nunchuck, they don't work on a PS3 and an Xbox 360, and so from a development standpoint, it's a nightmare. You know, I can't really afford to make a game that requires the you know, guitar controller. If I make my game to use the Wii controls, it's a nightmare for me to get it working on, you know, on a game that on a system that doesn't have that control mechanism. So from a development standpoint, it's a pain in the neck. But in terms of interactivity, I mean, what I think it does is it forces developers to think more creatively. It forces us outside of that box. I mean, most people, they won't leave their little box, you know, creative box, unless they have to. And having this, you know, this two-handed control scheme that has you know, motion sensors and infrared things, I mean, that's forcing people to be more creative in the games they're making, and that's all to the good. You know? I don't know that it's going to help us reach the mainstream, and I don't know how applicable the work people are doing on the Wii is to their everyday work, but I mean, as a Wii owner, I'm sure glad it exists, you know, because it gives me something to play that's actually fun for a change. I have a real bad attitude. Holy cow. Man. Yeah. Yeah. Any other questions? Well, you know, God, there have been so many. I mean, the game business, be warned, this is a wacky, wacky business, you know. I will get around to answering your question. If I don't, just remind me, okay? It's a business a lot like the movies, frankly, where, you know, 80% of product, and that's what the publishers consider it. I mean, 80% of product fails. You know, I mean, think about that. 20% of games make their money back. You know, I mean, it's crazy. Most of the revenue is generated by a handful of games every year. I mean, thousands of games get released every year, and the top 20 generate the lion's share of the revenue that gets generated. I mean, it's crazy. So just survival is really tough. But in the context of a commercial enterprise that's that tough, probably the toughest thing is I really have been fighting this fight for 20 years, you know, and trying to make a different kind of game. And you know, have I succeeded? I don't know. I mean, I basically hate every game I've ever worked on. You know, just getting people to believe in this particular idea that players are the important thing, that choice and consequence are worth it. I mean, every time I go to a publisher, every project I start, I have to fight the same fight. I mean, literally the same fight. I'm not going to name names, but I was talking to a publisher recently about a game, and here's the design, and I'm really psyched about it. And it has multiple end games, and it's got player development choices, character development choices that the player makes. That those character development choices that are player determined determine what tools the player has to interact with the world, which means each player is going to be able to solve problems in different ways, and they're going to want to try to solve different problems. And I'm running out of breadth here, but the publishers just said, "Is that worth all the work? Why are you doing that?" I mean, it's a variation of at another publisher I was working when I was working on Deus Ex. A publisher said, what percentage of players are going to play this just like a straight shooter? Are going to play it like Half-Life? And I said, yeah, I don't know, probably 70%. So why are you spending? And they came back to me, why are you spending one dime on a stealth model that at best 30% of your players are going to experience? And I was done. I was sunk. I mean, it just seems so self-evident that games should be about players. That players should get to express themselves as they play. And so the toughest challenge has been believing in this idea so strongly that I'm unwilling to compromise. I mean, if worst comes to worst, I'll open a bookstore. I mean, I will not compromise on this. And I think that may be what it takes to. I mean, you can succeed. You can make a lot of money in the game business if you're willing to sort of toe the line, but that's not good enough. That's not good enough. It's like I said earlier. We have the opportunity to create a new art form. Who gives a darn about maximum profit? And I'm never going to work again. Can we cut the camera? But it's true. You have to be willing to say, no, I believe in this, and I believe in this more strongly than I believe in the dollar. And that's probably been the toughest thing. Because frankly, even half of my teams think I'm crazy. I mean, they really do. So that's probably the toughest thing. Yeah. Because there are a lot of old farts around who are going to be gone pretty soon. I mean, it's true. I mean, look. If you look back in history, I remember when I was at UT, there was a book called Reading Television by guys named Fisk and Hartley. And that opened my eyes pretty dramatically too. There was a whole section early in the book about the critical response to Shakespeare, the contemporary critical response to Shakespeare. And there was a quote in it. I'm probably going to get it wrong, but it's like a quote from a contemporary review of a Shakespeare play. It's like, who is this Shakespeare who thinks he can bombast out a blank verse? Well, we don't always know what's really going to have lasting value in the moment, right? When we're experiencing something, when we're living it, we don't know what's really going to be important. I mean, when I was in grad school, I wrote a column for the Texan called Stay Tuned about TV, and I wrote stuff about how like All in the Family and Happy Days and stuff were going to be, the art that was remembered 100 years from now. And I'm probably completely wrong about that, but you just never know. That's my point. And just look back. I mean, there was D.W. Griffith, when he was starting out as a filmmaker, used the name Lawrence because he didn't want anybody to know he was making movies, because they were not well thought of. And whatever medium isn't understood by the current cultural gatekeepers, whatever the kids like, that's the stuff that the adults rebel against. And eventually, I mean, it wouldn't surprise me if there was a PlayStation in the White House right now. It sort of seems like it sometimes, and it wouldn't surprise. I mean, all it takes is that that critical mass of gamers to get into Congress and to get into the governor's mansion and to become the editors of the newspaper, and all of that stuff goes away, and all of a sudden there won't be any question. Well, I take that back. Assuming we're actually true to what makes us unique and special, and we find our footing as an art form, we'll be fine. On the flip side, there's always the risk that by continuing to just make games that are about, oh look, the AI is better at killing you now, and the explosions are cooler, we could very well end up a cultural backwater and a little footnote in history. I mean, it's not like all the comic. I mean, I love funny books. I love comics, right? But it's not like there is a department of comicology at the University of Texas, you know. And I think that's because the comics industry allowed itself to be neutered. They succumbed to the political pressure that, you know, Congress put on them, and the Comics Code. I mean, it just destroyed comics as an art form in the United States, at least. And if we succumb to that kind of political and cultural pressure that the old guard is trying to put on us, we're in a world of trouble. You know? But as long as we resist that, and we find what makes us unique, and we celebrate it, and we educate a new generation of gamers to expect and demand more from people like me, I think we're set. And all of that, you know, the Roger Eberts of the world are going to go away. In fact, actually, interestingly enough, if you look at the syllabus later on in the semester, I think, is there a reading? Did we put the Clint Hocking and Roger Ebert stuff on the syllabus? Anyway, if it's not on there, you should read it. I'm hoping to get Clint out here too. But you know, Roger Ebert said games aren't art, they can't be art, they're never going to be art, you know, showing a complete lack of any historical context. I mean, you guys, anyway. And whoa, and I'm about to fall. And Clint Hocking, who's one of the smartest young developers around, one of the smartest young designers around, wrote a response that's absolute genius. I mean, it tears Mr. Ebert apart. You know, it was great. It was great. So I don't think that's an issue. I just don't even worry about it, because all we have to do is wait them out. Yeah. It's not. Yeah, God, that is such a big question. Holy cow! You should remember that question and ask every guest, by the way. Okay, so how is technology shared if communication doesn't flow, if information doesn't flow between developers? Well, it flows in a couple. I mean, okay, here's what happens. You either become an epic and create the Unreal Engine and license it for a lot of money, or you become a Garage Games and create Torque and make that available for very little money. You know, technology is shared through licensing, okay? Because one of the other sad things about the game business is we're still, okay, imagine how effective Steven Spielberg would be as a filmmaker if he had to invent the camera every time he started a new movie, okay? That's what we do. That's what we do. We have to invent the camera anew every game. And for 10 years I've been saying, we're getting close, middleware, it's the answer, you know? And it just never happens. So we're still at a point where we have to license engines and then sort of twist them around to make them do what we want, you know? And it's a nightmare. It's a nightmare. So, but some technology gets shared through licensing. Certainly publishers try to get developers, internal studios to use technology. I mean, we were just acquired by Disney. We're working with a set of tools that was created by another studio inside the Disney organization. It's pretty cool so far, you know? It's not ideally suited to our needs, so we're sort of taking the camera and we're moving the reels of film down here, you know, and we're putting on a 3D lens and everything. I mean, it's craziness, but there is pathetically little technology sharing. I don't know if we'll actually be able to get anybody to talk about this. I mean, the hardware manufacturers do some somewhat self-serving, you know, sort of communication. They have conferences. I just sent 2 guys up to Microsoft for a big Xbox 360 conference where they talked about all sorts of secret stuff, you know. But really, there are secret masters of gaming. I mean, there really are. There are design mailing lists that you have to be, you have to know about to get on and, knock 3 times on the door and say, Joe sent me and, all that stuff. And there are pockets of people, like really, really hardcore, high-powered graphics programmers in the game business who talk to each other all the time, and if their employers found out, it would be a disaster. But there's a lot of under-the-table stuff that happens that advances the state of the art far more than the whole secretive, we need to own this tech. If they find out how we're creating our new explosion effects, we're doomed, It's like, whatever, give me a break. Yeah. No, the question is middleware going to take a hit based on the Silicon Knights lawsuit against Epic, and no, they're the only game in town. I mean, most places can't afford to create their own tech. I mean, there are companies that have spent $15 million and up just on creating their core engine. You know, it takes years. It takes amazing talent. It takes money. I mean, people are really most developers don't have a choice but to license stuff. They just don't. They either don't have the talent or they don't have the time and money. And for me, I mean, I always wanted to be a content guy. I speed the day that we have, you know, a camera that I don't have to invent and film where the sprockles haven't moved in 100 years. You know, I mean, speed the day. So I think, I mean, I'm not a lawyer. I don't know what's really going to happen in the suit, but I don't think it's really going to have much impact on anything. No. Sorry. Yeah. No, I hate online games. That's okay. You can say that. I really do. I wish they didn't exist. Well, the freedom is, it's mostly an illusion, for one thing. The big problem I have with, well, let me distinguish between online games and massively multiplayer games. All right, online gaming can be fun. You know, get 5, 10, 16 of your friends together and go do something cool together. Got no beef with that at all. I think that's in the shooter space, in the first-person shooter space. I think that's been a well-explored, well-exploited. I mean, well exploited. Really good stuff has happened there. Part of the game world. The problem for me with MMOs, and I really do, I'm going to get Richard Garriott up here, and we'll talk about this more, and we'll argue with each other. It'll be fun. The problem with MMOs is, I'm in a world with 10,000 of my close personal friends. I mean, I don't even want to be around 10 people most of the time, let alone 10,000 Nimrods. You know, some of whom are like, you know, I'm not going to curse. I said I was not going to curse in this one. Anyway, who are yelling curse words because they have the cover of anonymity, right? I mean, I'm not really interested in the social aspects of MMOs because I think the tools most games provide for socializing are primitive and horrible. And basically, no one has, and I don't think anyone ever will, solve the problem of how to make 10,000 people all feel like the hero of a story, right? So basically, you know, you've got a really bad story where basically the story is, I'm waiting in line to kill the dragon. You know, it's like, okay, I killed the dragon, and then the next person in line waits for it to respawn. Oh, there it is. Okay, you know, there's that kind of story. There are really bad socializing tools. You do the same things over and over and over again. I mean, good God, I have no interest in getting from level 69 to level 70 and getting my epic mount. I mean, I'm sorry. It's like, I want to do something that's a little more meaningful than that. There doesn't seem to be much going on in those games. It's all about leveling and about, you know, socializing. And I'd rather do that in person, you know, I guess. But if someone were to solve the problem of how to make me really feel like the hero of a story, in a World of Warcraft game, or in a Lineage game, or in a Tabula Rasa game, I'd be all over it. You know, I'd be all over it. And if they really did, like Guild Wars is kind of close. A game that lets you get together with, I'm sorry? Yeah, instancing, man, I got a whole proposal about MMOs and instancing and everything. I mean, the whole point is, if I had a way to get together with, you know, my friend who lives in LA and my other friend who lives in Denmark and my other friend who lives in Chicago, and we could go out adventuring, that'd be awesome, you know? The more of that, I think, the better. It's just, when you throw 10,000 people all in one place, you get a mess. You get a society, but you don't get a story, and you don't get a very compelling experience for me. You know? And I really do wish people would stop making those games, but that's just my prejudice. Yeah. I wonder if I should pull up that lecture. Okay, can I give the short version? Yeah, rock on. Digital distribution is a large part of our future. Big, huge, large part. you know, a lot of the problem with the game business now, and you will hear plenty more about this before the semester's over too, I'm sure, is that you have hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of developers making thousands and thousands and thousands of games, competing for limited shelf space. I mean, read The Long Tail. Read Chris Anderson's book, The Long Tail. If you haven't read that, write it down. Just read it. The fact is, retail space is the most constraining thing in the world when it comes to anything creative. And when we have easy ways to reach an audience, and I can reach an audience with my work, you know, I mean, I know about how many people want the games I make. Okay, I mean, I hope the audience is bigger than it is, but I mean, there are a couple million people who want what I do. You know, there are about 10 times as many people who want what Will Wright does. You know, but that's okay. I believe in what I'm doing. But when I can go directly to them and not have to convince someone, a publisher, to fund this thing, and then have them convince a retailer to put it on shelves, and then not take it off the shelves after 3 weeks because it didn't hit some arbitrary sales target, and there's some other game that's coming along that needs that, you know, square footage in Best Buy or something. Speed the day when that happens. The big problem we have in the game business, the big problem, is I think we in the same way that we're the only medium that can actually allow players to participate, allow users to participate, we're the only medium that doesn't have a secondary market. You know, we have one way of reaching consumers now, and that is get a and funding games. Publishers fund stuff, they put it in a box, retailer sells it. That's it. You know, we don't have DVD, we don't have CDs, we don't have you know, broadcast television. I mean, TV has 10 ways to make money off every program, you know, and we have one. Okay, so what we need, I mean, frankly, I left Ion Storm specifically to do direct digital distribution of episodic content funded through an alternate money stream, I guess, and came this close to pulling it off. Oh man, I'll tell you that story sometime when the mic isn't on and the camera's on. No, actually, I'm trying to get I have an agent. I mean, and the guy's name is Seamus Blackley, also known as the father of the Xbox. He's the guy who convinced Bill Gates basically to get into the video game hardware business. I'm trying to get him out here too, and I think I can pull that off. Anyway, he went to CAA and tried to put together an amazing sort of alternate financing and distribution deal that would have been fantastic, and we came real close to pull it off. But the problem is we need money. We need a way to fund the games that then get distributed, you know, electronically. If it's still the publishers just saying, well, we can fund, we have $100 million in our war chest, we can fund, you know, 10 games this year, or 8 games, or whatever the right number is, and then we'll go direct to the consumers, that doesn't help me. That still means there's a you know, bottleneck right there. And what I need is, I need to be able to reach everybody who might be interested in my stuff. And that means we need another way to raise money. And currently we don't really have that. So right now, I mean, like, if you're Valve and you have infinite money and Steam, you can go direct to your consumers and do just fine. If you're Ted Turner, or Turner Broadcasting, sorry, you know, and you have infinite money, you can create GameTap and you can go right to consumers. If you're Yahoo, if you're, you know, you name it. But if you don't have that money, you know, it's what makes the world go round. Yeah, you can wait a while. Oh God. You know, it's funny. I had to give a lot of thought to that. If you remember, what was it, a couple of years ago, an EA wife, an Electronic Arts, spouse of a guy who worked at EA, started posting all this stuff about the horrendous working conditions and all that. And there was talk about unionizing, and there was talk about having to pay overtime to developers, you know, who were being forced to work crunch hours. I mean, bear in mind, game developers typically will go on a project, you know, a 2-3 year project, they'll go 9 months of, you know, 7-day weeks. I mean, it's insane. And it is bad. And it doesn't help make the game better or quicker. And it's bad. And you know, I mean, I don't want to get into my politics. I'm an old union guy. I mean, I really believe in unions. I think they're a good idea. You know, it's and on the other hand, so I was really supportive of the workers. Yeah, if they're being exploited, let's take care of them. On the other hand, as a developer, if I had to pay overtime to my employees, the U.S. game industry would cease to exist. I mean, it would literally. I know I'm given to overstatement. I am not overstating now. If EA had to pay overtime to all of the people who are working crunch, and if I had to pay it, and if Ubisoft and Activision and everybody else had to pay it, all of game development would go overseas. We just couldn't afford it. I mean, we can barely afford it now. In my career, I mean, I'm tempted to go back to that earlier slide. I'm going to do that. I'm going to do that. Hold on, I'm going back to a slide. This will be funny. We'll find us amusing. At least I will find it amusing. Okay, so here is a slide. Come on. Sorry. Hold on. All right. Let's leave those two out of it. That game, Martian Dreams. Sorry for the camera people. I'm moving. That game cost $273,000 start to finish. It was budgeted at $225,000. And I got reamed by my boss, who will not be coming to this class. But anyway, for going like 50 grand over budget. By the time we got up to about, that was, Underworld was like 450, something like that. By the time we got to like System Shock Crusader, Wings of Glory, we were spending about $1 million. Then we go down here. Okay, so then we get over to here, $5.5 million right there. Okay, I can't believe I'm saying this out loud. This was another 2. These, I should not say this. Yeah, Deadly Shadows was about 11 million, and Invisible War was about 12, 12.5. Okay, my next game is going to cost at least twice that. Welcome to the world of next-gen development, okay? And you want, so that's 15 years we've gone from $273,000 to order 25 million. And you wonder why the publishers don't want to take risks, and you wonder why we don't have alternate financing schemes. Movies have alternate financing because you get to hang out with Sandra Bullock, and games you get to hang out with me, right? It doesn't work. So that's the dilemma. That's the problem right there. That is stifling creativity. I mean, you really have to be a Will Wright, or you have to have, Valve's success record and money, or you have to be a BioWare Pandemic and get bought by a $300, $400 million Elevation Partners, the firm. I mean, it's just crazy. The business is broken. I can't remember what the question was now. Darn it. Unionizing, right? Thank you. If my expectation is I'm going to spend $25 million on a game, and all of a sudden I have to start paying overtime, profit goes out the window, industry goes to China. So how do I feel about that? Boy, I kind of hope I figure out a way not to have to exploit my workers. But if I do, I just, a union would just kill us. It would just kill us. So I'm caught on the horns of a dilemma. Any questions? Yeah. We keep looking for new processes. We've sort of tried it by the seat of the pants. Project management. We've tried it by the seat of the pants. We've tried traditional software management stuff. The whole waterfall thing. We've embraced agile development. Right now, I really am trying Scrum. The Scrum method seems pretty cool. It seems pretty well suited to game development. We'll see. But really, it's a creative endeavor where quality is the only thing that matters. I mean, it's not, we don't create bridges or widgets. We don't create things that have a predictable end state. I mean, I've spent 9 months now, give or take, working on the concept phase for a game that I really can't talk about other than to say we're about to begin pre-production. But we were 9 months into it. We got a pretty good idea of what game we're going to make. At the end of pre-production, we'll have what we call a vertical slice, which is a playable part of the game that's representative of gameplay, and we will still have, I'm sorry, Disney, we will still have very little idea of what game we're really making until we get much further down the line. It's just, you know, if a game isn't fun, you have to make it fun. You have to fix it. Not really, no. I mean, the definition of, you know, your beginning pre-production is you have sufficient tool, for me anyway, you have sufficient tools to start prototyping. Before that, it's just conceptualizing. Figuring out what you want to do so you can build the tools you need to start making something. All right, yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, okay. So I actually had some slides that I cut for time, oddly enough. You know, this is the question. All that stuff I was talking about earlier, is it worth the risk? I mean, I think I've already answered that pretty much. And in my view, and again, publishers hate it when I say this, and this is my personal motto. It is better to fail gloriously than to succeed in mediocrity. I mean, it's just, if you shoot for the moon, you might end up in Honolulu. You know, if you shoot for Honolulu and you miss, you're drowning in the ocean, right? Always shoot for something, even if you think it's impossible. But how do you know if you succeeded? Well, there are a couple of things. Then this is something you will do in your labs and you will learn in this class, I hope. You are constantly playtesting. The earlier you can prototype something and playtest and watch players experiencing your work, the better you are. There are plenty of developers who do not believe that they wait until the end, and what QA does, what quality assurance does, is they find your bugs, and that's it, because you're the designer and you know what's right. That's garbage. So the instant we have 5 minutes of gameplay, we can sit somebody down to experience. We sit them down and we record it, we videotape it, and you got 5 minutes of really bad gameplay, and you sit somebody down and your whole team is there watching, and they're not allowed to say a word. They just have to watch that player experiencing what's happening on the screen. It's horrible. There's nothing you people could say to me that would hurt me as much as watching players not get a game, okay? You develop a very thick skin in the game business, trust me. So you do that for 3 years, and you start to see what players are experiencing and what they're not, what they're getting and what they're not, where you're constraining them too much and where you're giving them too much freedom and they're feeling scared, frankly, okay? And you listen to them, and you go online and you hear them talk about it. You blind test until you go blind, you know? And if they're saying stuff like, you know, hey, wasn't it cool when you went down into that prison and the guy was there like ready to give you a reward when you let him loose? And someone else says, what do you mean? He tried to kick my ass when I let him out. He was my enemy. He hated me. And someone else says, what prison? You know, that's when you know you've won. That's when you know you've succeeded. And it's all you can do is, I mean, you can use your gut, your instinct, and your experience. You know, you can play test until you never want to see your own game again, and then you just track it and hope for the best. You know, again, it's like nobody goes into a movie, you know, into the production of a movie hoping to make a bad movie. You just got to go with your gut and hope for the best. Same thing with games, you know. You know, so that's pretty much it. That's how you know you've succeeded, because you actually have to watch players experiencing your work, preferably before you ship it. Did I answer the question? Yeah. More power to them. I have no idea how they do it. I mean, the thing is, You know, there are two types of developers that do that. There are the ones who, for whatever reason, got lucky, made a huge hit, earned a ton of money, were founded by like the 107th employee of Microsoft and therefore started with infinite money they could afford to lose. You know, there are guys like that, the developers like that, who can just make, you know, big budget AAA extravaganzas and own their own fate, control their own fate. And then there are smaller companies who are going to make smaller stuff. I mean, I've got a really good friend who may also come in here to talk at some point, who left the grind of big publisher AAA games and made his own little casual game. It's called Tino's Fruit Stand. You can download it anywhere. Tino's Fruit Stand. It's a good little game. He did it himself. He funded it himself. It cost him, you know, tens of thousands of dollars. I don't want to do that, you know. So that's the dilemma. You either start with a ton of money and control your fate, or you do something small and control your fate. You know, someone else who might actually come in to talk here, a woman named Kathy Schobach, did a wonderful talk at the Game Developers Conference a couple of years ago, where she laid out game sales versus game budgets and return on investment versus game budgets. And what she discovered was that there is a fantastic business, in video games if you're willing to spend more than $10 million on a game. This was long enough ago that the number's probably 20 now, but let's use the earlier numbers because I know they're true. $10 million and up, great business. $2 million and below, great business. If you're anywhere in the middle, you're doomed, you know, and you better have corporate backing. You better be part of a publisher. So I think it's great that people can do that. You know, I know you didn't ask me what about me personally, but I was unwilling to compromise the scope of the game I wanted to make, the kind of game I wanted to make, and I was unwilling to give up 1% of my company to anybody. I mean, it's bad enough having a company that understands games, that is in the game business, telling you, you know, what stupid thing they want you to do. Having someone who, you know, made $20 million in the stock market, you know, who said, oh, my son likes games, I'll try making a game. You know, I couldn't do it. You know, and I've seen too many companies sunk by VCs, by venture capital money, so I just didn't want to go that route either. So somewhere, you got to get the money from somewhere. You know, what I tried to do was get film financing, I mean, the independent film business has a pretty robust funding model, but that's based on, this is a much longer discussion we can have some other time, but it's based on tax write-offs that are loopholes that are rapidly being closed around the world. So that source of funding is drying up even for independent films, and the money in an independent film deal is triggered by a guarantee of distribution, and so you need to have someone sign up before you've done one thing on your game and saying, I will distribute this game. Yes, I will put it on shelves. And so, you know, in a movie, you can show a script and you can say, I've got this director, and that's a package that means something. For a game, I have this concept document that doesn't reflect in any way the game I'm going to ship in 3 years. Pretty much doesn't have the same cachet, you know? And that gets us back to digital distribution. If digital distribution could be our guarantee of distribution, then all of a sudden, you know, maybe independent financing would actually work. But then we have the problem with the tax loopholes drying up. So, you know, whatever. It's a nightmare. I don't know how to do what those guys are doing. So I'm stuck in a publisher world, at least for now. Yeah. Oh, I love it. This is great. You got the whole semester, man. I'm going to be here every week for 13 weeks. Well, there are a bunch of ways. How do you get in the game business? We should probably just do a session about it. In fact, you know, when Harvey comes in, we're going to talk about that, because he is like his career has been it's been typical in a weird way, and yet dramatic and wonderful. No, I mean, I got it. I have no idea how I got in the game business. I mean, it's such a bizarre story. It's not even worth repeating, just because it's so unusual. You can't generalize from my experience. Okay, I'm happy to tell you over beers or something sometime. No, there are a couple of ways to get in the game business. The easiest, quickest, probably most effective, and most ego-sucking probably is get a job in QA. Get a job as a tester. You know, it pays almost nothing. The hours are grueling. You can end up hating whatever game you're testing. But it is the best way to get in the game business. Absolutely bar none. It doesn't matter what you do, what you want to do. Get a job as a tester. On Underworld, one of our testers was a math PhD from MIT. Okay? He became a programmer, and a very good one, at the company after that project shipped. One of the other folks I hope to get in here at one point was an MIT undergrad in computer science who ended up being a designer programmer of some note on subsequent projects. One of the guys I'm desperately trying to steal away from another publisher here in town started out as a tester. He's an incredible programmer. I've had Harvey, just not to, you'll hear this again when he comes in, you know, but Harvey was a tester for me on System Shock, and he is now the creative director for Midway here in town. You know, it is the thing about being a tester is it puts you in, it gets you in the door, it puts you in daily contact, not just with, you know, the Nimrods in marketing or whatever. It puts you in daily touch with the most senior people on the project you're testing. And it gives you a chance to interact with them one-on-one and show them that you get their vision, you know, so you can help them make their game better. Harvey made my games better. And it gives you the chance to show what your design philosophy is, what kind of games you would make, you know. And it gets you hands-on with the tools because you're going to be going in there in the editor and loading stuff up and changing things around at the direction of the people who are asking you to test the game. QA is awesome. It is the best way to get in. If you're not willing to do that, you damn well better be the best programmer, the best artist, the best writer, best mod maker, best something, because that's the only other way. The industry, we get many more applications than we have openings. Even though there are at least 2-3 studios here in town who are growing by, you know, 100 people in the next year, we are going to get more resumes than we have openings. And so if you can demonstrate that through work you've done on your own, that you are an incredible level builder, you'll get a job. If you can demonstrate that you are the master of game-relevant animation in Maya, you will get a job. If you can show me the renderer you wrote in 2 weeks, you'll get a job. And by the way, all of those were true for me. I hired a guy who said, I can write you a new renderer in 2 weeks. No problem. It's better than the one you got. And he did it. Whoa. Guy got the job, you know. One of the designers who works for me, Monty Martinez, he did Quake mods. Doom, sorry, it was back in the Doom days, sorry. Doom mods, you know. He's still working for me. You know? His maps were so cool and so different. They were unique. Even though they weren't the kinds of maps, he didn't make the kind, you can't with Doom or Quake make the kind of games that I make. You know, you can use that as a starting point. But the stuff he was doing was so interesting. I was saying, okay, we can make this guy into what we need, you know. So you need to be one of those two. You need to be a guy who's willing to put his ego on, you know, aside for the moment and be a tester, or you need to be really damn good, and you need to probably be a specialist in something. You know? Obviously, there's a much longer discussion about getting in the game business. Okay. Sure. Oh God, you guys are giving me so much trouble. You know, I probably shouldn't talk about that too much because I'm just not a big Metal Gear fan. I met Kojima the other day. It was really cool. I met the guy who makes the Metal Gear Solid games the other day. What's that? He did have Kojima. Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty cool. I get to hang out with some cool people, and I'm kind of a geek and a fan. So what can I say? But you know, I'm not real crazy about the Metal Gear Solid games. So I mean, they're becoming much too cinematic, and they're becoming more video game like all the time. And that's the thing. It's like I'm much more sort of into simulating the stealth experience and not just sort of triggering things through pre-scripted, you know, dropping scripted triggers throughout the world and stuff. So I'm not a huge fan of the MGS series. You know, so I think I'm going to stop there and we'll talk when the mic is on. Let me retain some shred of a career here, okay? Yeah. Yeah, sure. What do I think about video games being used to expose truths and to you know, expose meaning and stuff like that? I think that's fantastic. I mean, there's another book, oh gosh, by a University of Wisconsin professor named James G. What is it? What we can learn from video games or something. I can't remember the exact title of it, but terrific book about all of the amazing things that people can learn by playing video games, and not about, you know, how to go on a killing spree. You know, I think that's the capability of games to teach is powerful and underappreciated. You know, there are people using video games now to train brain surgeons, and certainly the Army is using video games as a recruiting tool. You know, you can think what you want about that, but it expresses some of the power that video games have and over us, I guess. I think they're powerful communication tools, and the fact that it's you doing stuff means that we really can use games to allow people to test behaviors, you know, and reveal the consequences. So it's like, you know, in Deus Ex there was an example. Like my wife has never finished it because she played an early beta copy of the game and accidentally killed a dog. You know, it wasn't, there is never a moment in the game where you have to kill a dog. But there are dogs in the game, and you have a gun in the game. And it would be stupid for me to say you can stand there and just shoot a gun in a game that's all about, you know, choice and consequence. You know, and so I wanted, if you kill a dog, I mean, Michael Vick, wow, go to prison, you know. But you know, I made it disturbing on purpose. I mean, I wanted a spreading pool of blood, and I wanted that dog to squeal and really be in pain, you know, and then die. And, you know, she was so disturbed by it, she had to stop playing. And I thought that was an appropriate response. No, I mean, I really thought that was an appropriate response. I mean, I'm sorry she didn't finish the game, but you don't know my wife. She would much rather kill a human than a dog. But remember, Deus Ex, you can get through without killing anybody. So she was playing the I'm not going to kill anybody route. And accidentally, I mean, a dog got in the way of something she was trying to do, and the dog died, you know. And, you know, the fact that we can put players in situations where they become that uncomfortable and maybe learn something about themselves, I think is awfully good. And we need to use that every way we can. I prefer it if we didn't use it for, like, you know, training soldiers, but hey, it's better that, you know, if we're going to have soldiers, better they be trained, you know, than not, I guess. Yeah. Can games critique society? Can they be used for satire? You know, again, I hope every game I've done has had some level of social criticism in it. I think there are plenty of other developers who try for social. Satire is not so much what people are going for. I think Tim Schafer and Ron Gilbert are probably the only two people I can think of who are really after, you know, satire. But play BioShock, you know, and you can ignore all of the Ayn Rand stuff in there, but you can learn a lot about you know, women's philosophy by playing that game. And some of it's explicit and some of it's implicit, but you can get quite an education playing that little game. The problem, I'm sorry, I'm kind of, it's a hard question to answer because it is so hard to do humor in games because, you know, most players aren't funny, okay? And a simulation of humor is not something that is well understood. A simulation of a virtual trigger or the swing of a tennis racket, those are things we get, you know, but how to make, I mean, most of what we do is make people feel more clever than they are, okay? And hopefully we let them actually be this clever, but we want them to feel this clever. And we can't even make them feel this fun, you know? So satire per se, I mean, like, that'd be tough. I wish somebody would do it, you know? But we're still, I mean, that's why you guys have to become developers and you have to change the world, right? Because I don't know how to do that. I know how to do what I do. I mean, I just went through like an hour of like boring you guys to tears with, this is what I do, you know, you should believe this. But, you know, the reality is someone has to come along and you know, I mean, Harvey is like, we have this whole Oedipal thing going on. It's like, I think he has to kill me to succeed, you know, right? I'm his father figure or something, I don't know. But no, he's doing stuff that I would never think to do, and that's great. Someone has to come along and figure out how to do a love story. I was on a love story panel with Phil Wright and Raph Koster, you know? And it's like, geez, I mean, I couldn't figure out how to do it. How do you make a love story game? I was completely flummoxed by the problem. Someone needs to come along and figure that out, you know? How do you make a really funny game that's genuinely interactive, where the player is funny, not the creator? Someone needs to do that. Someone needs to make a damn musical. If Joss Whedon can make, you know, musical Buffy, someone needs to make a musical game that isn't just a rhythm game, you know? I mean, much as I love those, by the way, don't misunderstand. You know, I don't know how to do that. That's going to take the next generation or a generation after that. That's going to take creativity and tools that I can't even imagine, you know? But yes, games can absolutely and do every day teach people something about the world and about themselves and change the way they think about the world, I hope. Yeah. Oh, no, I did not say that. Sorry, you finish your question, but I need to clarify that. Wow, I'm tempted to get out yet another PowerPoint presentation and bore you to tears, but I won't do that. I do have a whole talk about that I give to educators all the time about what they should be teaching and stuff. The interesting thing, okay, if you want to be a designer, you have a couple of routes. You are not going to start out as the guy who conceives the game. Get over that. Okay, ideas are the easy part of this business. It doesn't matter how good your idea is. You will not come into a company and make that game. It's just not going to happen. There are too many ideas floating around Junction Point and Midway and every other studio in the world for a newcomer to come in and have an idea so good we just have to do it. Done. Get out of there. But you can actually, there are plenty of tools out there. I mean, there's like Neverwinter Nights from BioWare. I mean, every first-person shooter releases its tools. Build something that is so cool and compelling that, you know, the company that is interviewing you has to hire you. You probably want to tailor it to the company you're talking to as well. Like at Origin, we had enough of a fan base at Origin, and like the Ultima games were distinctive enough that we would get people all the time who made their own Ultima. They ripped off Ultima. They just ripped it off, you know. But they recreated it from scratch, like on a Commodore 64. You know, this is back in the day. That's cool. I mean, if you care enough about the kinds of games we made, to recreate them, to sort of reverse engineer them, and do something that was any good, that told a new story, guess what? You had a job. And you can still do that today. If you want to get a job at BioWare, show them a Neverwinter Nights mod, you know? And do a good one. It ain't easy, by the way. It ain't easy. But, you know, that's if you want to be a designer, that's one thing you can do. If you're in a university and you're trying to figure out what to study, that's a little tougher, okay? because every company is looking for something different. I can tell you that I am looking for people who have hands-on experience with those tools. So that's a requirement. You got to do that outside of school. You got to do that. You have to get your hands on an editor and use it and make games, right? You at least better be the GM in your D&D group, okay? But in school, you need to have some technical chops. So make sure you take at least an introductory programming class, at least. You know, you probably, well, okay, short answer. You want to take some graphics classes because you're the place where everything, the designer's where everything comes together, right? It's where all those pieces, all the tools, technology, art assets, everything come together with the design. So you better understand how those assets are made. So even if you're a bad artist, I said I wasn't going to curse in this class. Get yourself some graphics training. Course here, course there. It doesn't have to be a lot. And then get yourself a really good liberal arts education. I mean, in my career, I've had to know everything from what daily life was like in a medieval castle to how the Bilderberg group operates, to how the flight dynamics of a World War I Sopwith Camel differed from the flight dynamics of a Fokker triplane. Hugely important parts of what designers do involve understanding economics. Every game has an internal set has an economy. Every game has an economy, okay? You need to understand economics. Take a behavioral psychology class because we're all about reward structures, reward schedules, and frankly manipulating people a little bit. Take some film classes, obviously, because we are a visual medium. And the more you understand about you know, how cinematic sequences work, even if it's just so you know what not to do in a game, you know, you need a little bit of everything if you want to be a designer. And that's a tricky bit because you might graduate with all those courses under your belt and go apply for a job at Joe Schmo Gaming, which just wants, you know, Quake mod guys, and they don't, you studied psychology, we don't care, you know. The other thing, and this is true for everybody who wants to be in the game business, I realize I'm giving you guys a huge straight line. I'm counting on the fact that I am the lecturer, that you're not going to nail me for this. But you need really, really good communication skills. You need to be able to write like nobody's business, and you need to be able to speak like nobody's business. So get every chance you get to stand up in front of a class or in front of a group of people, take it, because you need to be able to do that. You will be giving presentations. It doesn't matter who you are, artists, programmers, designers, you will be giving presentations. They may be little ones. You may just be explaining your work, but you need to be able to explain it. And you will be writing documents, design documents, technical design documents, comments in code, you know. Take some writing classes, you know. Do some public speaking. You need to do that. You can't, I'm overstating. I am now overstating. But it's very hard to be the shy person in the game business now, you know, because communication on a team of 100, 150 people, or even 30 people, is crazy. And you need to be a great communicator. So, I mean, if you want to be a designer, build yourself a great liberal arts curriculum, throw in some tech stuff and some graphic stuff, and you're probably pretty good. Boy, I'll tell you, I wish we still made text adventures. You know, it is what it is. It is what it is. You can't roll back the clock. You can't change it. What I am encouraged by is that we really are getting to a point where there are some very, very expensive games out there, but there are also some very, very inexpensive ones. 5 years ago, I was at GDC and I did this rant panel where I went on for about 40 minutes, railing about how the industry was doomed and it was all doom and gloom. And I don't believe that anymore. You know, there are enough ways to reach an audience, and there's such a huge variety of games out there now. I mean, look at Flow on the PS3. Yeah, if you have a PS3 and you haven't played Flow, just do it. You know, look at Portal. Portal was done by I'm pretty sure it was 7 Digipen students using the Source engine. And they got a job at Valve on the basis of that, you know? I mean, it cost them nothing to make that. You know, there are inexpensive games out there. There are small games out there that are hugely creative. There's a much broader range. We still need a broader range, but we're getting better. So there are $2 million games out there and $1 million games out there. I just can't make them, you know, because it doesn't fit what I want to do. But you know, I had an interesting experience. The UT Center for American History is doing a video game archive now, and we had a fundraising event out at Richard Garriott's property last week. And Ralph Baer, who may really literally be the father of the video game. I mean, the guy created the first home television game system ever. I mean, his stuff is in the Smithsonian, I mean, which is kind of cool. Anyway, he sent like the earliest wooden box prototype of his little Pong game. And Richard and I were playing it, and we were just amazed because it was as challenging and as much fun as anything that you can play today. It was really cool. And it was Pong, you know? So, I mean, you can still make a game for next to nothing that doesn't have amazing graphics. And it can be as much fun. The problem is reaching an audience with it, you know? If my graphics aren't as good as the graphics in BioShock or, you know, whatever Gears of War, pick whatever game you think looks best right now. You know, it's not going to sell. It just won't get in players' hands. It doesn't matter how good the gameplay is. That's kind of sad. But again, that's just because I'm 20 years into my career and the stuff I do is really expensive. Not that there isn't room for cheaper games out there. That was a long non-answer to a question. That was pretty cool. Okay, I have no idea what time it is. I think I've worn you out. Man, you guys are supposed to be college students. You're supposed to be energetic. I could go for another hour. Holy cow. All right, I think we're done. Anyway, next